welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, and we are nearing the end. Not too much left to do. So what we're going to do now is we're going to launch our final Telos X and send it on its way to Eve, where it is going to drop some probes to scout out landing sites and wait in orbit to pick up our crew member who's going to go land. So I'm looking here. I need to leave one slot free. I guess we'll send Kim Fraud. And I don't know how Bill doesn't have a 4th star, so we're going to send him too. Even though he's kind of just along for the ride. Alright, and one thing I'm actually going to do, you're going to notice, I'm not going to deploy the solar panels. Because I need these little things to have no ejection force, because otherwise these probes would rip right through the solar panels, and I don't want to do that. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to build up... Where's our tankage? We're going to build up the rest of our booster here to send this on its way to Eve. Alright, and we will use good old trusty mainsail engine. And I'm going to kind of breeze through this construction. We've built this sort of a booster before. I'm reasonably confident you know what to expect. For sending this Talos over to Eve, I'm actually going to hurry and speed through a significant chunk of this mission. Just because it's all stuff that we've done before. And I want to set aside a good amount of time for what's coming next. Building our Eve Ascent vehicle is going to be quite the project. It's going to take a little while. And we're also going to be doing some stuff with the Eve Ascent vehicle that I have not done so far in this career. We're going to be doing all kinds of crazy orbital refueling and stuff like that. And I want to get all of the prep work done in this episode so that in the next episode we can actually launch to Eve and do our landing. So I'm going to fast forward through some of the stuff here just because it's all stuff that you have seen already. Okay, so we are on our way to Eve. We've launched. I did some quick angular guesstimates and got really lucky setting up this maneuver node on the first try there. That was total skill. That was complete skill, and if you can't do that, you have a skill issue and should learn to play. But, so we've got our Eve intercept all set up, and look at that, only 800 delta V. You know, Eve is not hard to get to in terms of delta V. It's just that weird orbital inclination that makes it a little crazy. But we should be coming in relatively close to the equator. But once we are on our intercept trajectory, I'll go ahead and do some corrections en route. Just trying to make sure that, you know, we're burning less delta V once we actually get into Eve. And once we get there, you know, we're going to circularize. I'm going to bring my orbit down pretty low, maybe around like 150,000. And we're going to release our little lander probes. The purpose of those, again, is to scout landing sites. Eve is covered in very thick clouds using the nice graphical mods that we're running here. And a large chunk of the surface of Eve is covered in liquid. It has oceans that are called the explodium seas. I'm guessing that Eve has, like, you know, oceans of rocket fuel or something. And that is definitely not where we want to be landing our ascent vehicle. So because we can't see the terrain features from space, we're literally going to be sending the little probes down to scout for landing sites. We're just going to send them down into the atmosphere and see where they land. And hope for the best. And with luck, at least one of them will find itself in a good, stable landing area, and we'll use that as sort of like a beacon. You know, we'll use it as our target when it actually comes time to land. Now, one thing you're going to notice I'm not doing is I'm not tracking the fuel right now in these side tanks because we have to keep them with us because that's where our little landing probes are mounted. So it's not super efficient, but again, you know, Talos X is overbuilt. We have way, way too much delta V. Nice. Okay. Oh, and it's doing that. All right, let me try this a little. Let me see if I can get it to... All right, there we go. Just wanted it to stabilize a little bit. And that is extremely close to an orbital intercept. And I think that's even going to get us on the right side of the planet. So I'm going to do a save here. And you'll forgive me if I reload this. If this brings us in on the wrong side of the planet, which I don't think it will, I'm just going to reload that and make the little 5 delta V correction to fix it way out there, instead of spending, you know, thousands of delta V to do it once we're in orbit around Eve. So forgive me that minor indulgence. You know, we're getting close to the end here, and I'll admit I'm getting kind of anxious and excited to get this landing mission on its way to Eve. All right. Okay, brought us in on the right side of the planet. This ended up being less than ideal for an intercept. I should have paid a little bit more attention and fixed it. But that's okay. You know, we've still got Delta V to spare. So I'm gonna be spending some Delta V here to not only circularize, but to equatorialize our orbit. And the main reason for that is I want to make sure that we're... Oh, yeah, there we go. I want to make sure that we're in a good position to launch our little probes down along, you know, a somewhat equatorial trajectory. And the idea with that is that an equatorial orbit will give us a known point of reference and make our landing for the ascent vehicle a lot easier, and it'll dramatically simplify, like, aiming for the probe. And make no mistake, this is not going to be, you know, when it comes time for that, that is by no stretch of the imagination going to be a precision landing. We're looking to land, like, in the same general region. You know, we're just trying to scout a location that is not in the water and is not in the middle of mountains. Because Eve has some pretty serious mountains. And when you see the ascent vehicle, you'll understand why I cannot land it on any kind of a slope. All right. Now, yeah, I'm gonna have to do it over here. Whoop. Okay, and as happens somewhat often, we're fighting the interface there. And how are we doing? I think we're probably... Yeah, we're almost done with those tanks. We will be by the time we lower our orbit. But again, we're keeping them with us. Just for the purposes of being, like, you know, attached to our landing probes. Oh, I didn't want to be. I didn't want to be in physics warp for that. Okay, that looks extremely close to an equatorial orbit. So I'm going to use it as a baseline. We'll lower down a bit. We'll lower down quite a lot, actually. And I'll speed this up just because I'm going to be doing a few minutes of burns here. Okay, this is generally close enough. So what I'm going to do now is... Well, first thing I'm going to do is we're going to need to see probes and relays and stuff for this. So I'm going to warp us around to the dark side so that I can land in the sunlight. And we're literally... Yeah, we're just gonna turn retrograde. And we're just gonna release the first of these. And we're gonna crake in insurance. Okay. So now we send this little guy, and I'm going to do some time warping. We're just going to lower his orbit using the RCS. And as you can see, for a little probe like this, even those RCS blocks they've got a considerable amount of delta V in them. Even with just that small amount of monopropellant. So I'm going to fast forward through this because this takes a little while here. Okay, and since the atmosphere of Eve is so much thicker than Kerbal, we're only bringing our periapsis down to about 60,000 for our nominal kind of entry trajectory here. Alright. And now we're going to do our re-entry, and it's F5 for safety. Do our Kraken insurance. So again, looking at Eve from space here, we can't really see through these thick cloud layers. Once we actually get down in there, you'll understand why I'm doing this. Big chunks of the surface are covered with liquid ocean that we don't want to land our ascent vehicle in. It doesn't float. And big chunks of the surface are covered in crazy mountains and stuff. And we can't land on an incline. So we gotta hope, that between our 5 landing probes, at least one of them is gonna find somewhere that is reasonably flat and reasonably dry. Alright, that was a good entry there. Nice and simple. Now we can take off our stability assist. Yeah, and see, you can see out there some of the horizon, and the clouds are still too thick to tell whether or not we're coming in wet or dry. I think once we get down to around like 8,000 or so, it'll be a little more obvious. But it's been a long time since I've landed on Eve. And you're going to notice, look at our surface speed, right? Our probe here, even with no anything, is losing a lot of speed. Okay, so we're coming in over the water. This is wet. But this is a good illustration. So I'm going to let this probe impact and explode. Well, no. What I'll do is I'll rename it to debris. And I'll land it anyway just to demonstrate. But so there are some good land masses, and here is some ocean. And of course out there are a bunch of crazy mountains. And we don't want to land anywhere near those crazy mountains. Almost made it to the beach. Almost. Yeah, and you can see here, even with, look at that, 2 meters per second off of this parachute. I mean, I'm going to end up cutting the cord on this and letting it crash, but I just wanted to demonstrate. And we'll go back. Oh, yeah, we have to let it crash before to let us switch back. Oh, is it going to make me go back to... Fine. But so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to repeat that process 4 more times and hope that one of the probes is going to land on flat, dry terrain. And so I'm going to fast forward this a little bit. Yeah, this one's no good. We're coming in over the Explodium Sea. And you can see in our biome up there in our Kerbal Engineer readout, Explodium Sea. So that sucks. Alright. We'll reclassify it as debris. And we'll see if we can actually splash this one down safely, just to save a little time. I'm going to pop the chute a little bit lower and fast forward through the descent, because it can take a lot of time. Alright, so we safely splashed down a probe on Eve, and we got a nice achievement for it. Splashed down in the oceans of Eve. Okay. Now we're going to go back to our Telos X. I'm actually going to take this opportunity to adjust our inclination a little bit closer to the equator. I noticed on that last one that it was a little bit more inclined than I'd wanted. So we've got 3 more. Okay, that is a lot closer, I think, to an equatorial orbit. I think. All right. Well, just for good measure, I'm going to let a little bit of time pass. All right, now we'll do a quick save. And again, I will speed this up because this entry burn here does take quite a bit of time. Alright, so once again, we are coming in over the ocean. And I'm going to rename this to debris so that it gets ignored. And we're going to do the exact same thing we did before. And, you know, just for giggles, I'm actually going to release one of these here. And see what happens. And again, I'll fast forward this just because it's going to take a little while for this burn. But I don't know, maybe we'll come in towards the end of the night side and see what we get. Okay, this one might have potential. I'm noticing our Kerbal Engineer readout shows us as coming in over the highlands. I would prefer lowlands, but this might have potential. Okay. This actually looks decent. This one might be it. We're still going to do the others. But this one looks like it might be the winner. Yeah, look at this. This is good. Like, right down in that area there would be perfect. This is good. Even this, I don't think, is too much of a slope. I'm just trying to avoid, like, those mountains and stuff, you know, or coming in centered on top of like a ridge line or some nonsense. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename this, and I'm going to rename it as a base so it stands out. And I'm just going to call it Site 1. And we're going to save. And because again, if you look at where we're landed, like this whole region, except for maybe those mountains, but this whole region is relatively safe. This is exactly the kind of landing we wanted to achieve. So I'm gonna leave that there marked on the surface, and I'm gonna speed this up, and I'm gonna drop these other two in, just to see, maybe there's a chance one of these other two, lands somewhere that's better. You never know. Oh, I'm sorry. This last one. Ooh, yeah, that's right. All right. We can also dump these. Yeah, we can dump those. That wasn't needed. All right. Can extend our solar panels now, and we will undock that. And we're just setting up our stuff. Okay, and we'll do our descent. And this one's going to be coming in the dead of night. Alright, this one also might have potential. It says we're coming in over the Midlands. But I'm just looking out over the terrain there. And we might be close to some shores. It's hard to tell, but I'll land this, and we'll fast forward over to the day side and see what happens. And I think I actually might have still had those probes attached to those tanks, but I might just be blind. It looked like they were gone. I may just be an idiot, so I may have two more of these to try. Ooh. Okay, and this one, that's also not bad. Yeah, this is also a relatively good region. Down there would be a little better. But this isn't bad. What did we call that other one? We called it Site 1. I'm just going to call this Site 2. And we'll save that. Why did it... It's keeping these individual stack separators as probes? Something's a little weird with that. I mean, it doesn't really matter, but... Come on. Alright, we've still got some useful fuel left in there. We are in a relatively equatorial orbit. So I'm gonna leave this where it is. We've got 2 potential landing sites marked. So at this point, we are gonna go back to our space center, and we're gonna build our Eve ascent vehicle. However, at this point, I'm gonna clip. It's actually kind of late for me now. I've been recording for quite a while today, so I need to take a break. And I am going to come back in the morning and hit this with fresh face. We'll build our Eve ascent vehicle, it'll continue this episode. My hope for this episode is to continue through building our Eve ascent vehicle, and building an orbital fueler that we need to make. I just can't help myself but looking through these. I would really love to get a contract for planting the flag on Eve. But somehow I just don't think I'm going to get one. Yeah, we don't have one. But it doesn't hurt. All right, so anyway, I'm gonna clip here, and I will see you back in a minute, even though it'll be hours for me. Okay, so we're back in the Kerbal Space Center, and we're gonna design our Eve ascent vehicle. Now, Eve is similar to Lethe and, frankly, Kerbal. Has a very thick atmosphere that can be difficult to get through. And we are going to have to use an absolutely enormous rocket in order to do so. Now, I'm going to try and design this like upper stage to absolutely maximize our Delta V once we get up there. So I'm gonna use one of these. Use an RTG so that we have it. Oh, come on. Can I get further in there? There we go. So that I have it basically for the entire mission. I should name that our Eve mission. Okay. And I'm thinking this will probably be our top stage. Now, the goal is that we're going to get this into space around Eve. And you can see it's got a fair amount of delta V. So getting this into... Oh, and I actually do have to do... one bit of weight that I really don't want to, but... don't have a lot of choice. These parachutes, by the way, are going to be for Eve, not for Kerbin or anything. So now we're going to use some aerodynamic fuel tanks. An engine plate, and I usually use an aero spike. Now, here's the thing, right? So the thrust to weight ratio on this is very poor. The thing is, the efficiency is going to be really good. So the idea is that our lower stages are going to get this high enough into Eve's atmosphere and everything that the thrust to weight ratio won't be super critical, and we'll be able to just get this into space and call it a day. Because if we can get this above, you know, the Kerman line on Eve, we'll be all set. Because look at the delta V and stuff down here. We have a fair amount of delta V. That's not bad at all. And you know what I'm actually going to do? I'm going to just... there. You know what? I'll even do it like that. Just thinking out loud. Because the issue becomes, this is not a very stable sort of a stage. So when we stage into this from what's going to come below it, we have a very high risk of like flipping over and doing twirls and stuff, and it gets really dumb. So that is what we are trying to avoid. Let's get some of that. Cool. Okay. Now we're gonna kind of go in reverse. We're gonna go back down to 1875 twice. And we're gonna power this with a vector engine, which is kind of beefy, and that's what we're going for. And we'll give this some aerodynamic fins. Now, sorry, I've been talking a lot today. I know you're thinking this isn't going to be enough, and you're right, it's not. So what we're going to do, I know you're shocked, but we're going to be doing some asparagus. I know, that's completely unheard of for me, right? All right. Now, whoops, not that one. Okay. And we're going to be doing a whole bunch of extra parachutes and stuff like that coming off this in just a minute. I just want to get this this stuff all set up. Alright, I want to get some Separatrons. Close enough. Nah. Didn't quite work out how I'd wanted. Yeah, I'll just have to do it this way. I mean, it's fine. I'm just being nitpicky. All right. And so all that's going to do is dump those, away from the core stage here. Now, of course, we have to asparagus connect these. And there we go. And let's do a strut. And let's do another. And we'll do one more up here for good measure. Yeah, I think that'll about do it. So this is our ascent vehicle from Eve. Now there's going to be a little more to it here. We're gonna do some parachutes. There will be a fair number of parachutes going on. That should be adequate. Let me count for a moment. Yeah. Yeah, I think that should be enough. Okay. Anything else I'm forgetting? I don't think so. We've got... Oh, yes. Our Kerbal engineer part. We need that. Alright. And so now... this is where we do our cheese that we did on Lethe. And we stick a Mark I lander can down on the bottom. And use this as a launch pad. How about that? So, we're going to land this on Eve. Crazy. Crazy, right? Yeah, pretty much. So, the idea is that we're going to get this to Eve using a really big, chunky kind of a booster. get it into Eve's atmosphere, use a whole bunch of heat shields, the inflatable heat shields. Oh, whoops. And get this, in a safe descent trajectory. And start popping these parachutes. And that will, in theory, we pop these up here first. And that should swing the rest of this around and orient it right side up, if it is not already oriented correctly. Because, sending something like this into the atmosphere of another planet, there's a good chance it's gonna want to be like a Wobble Master 9000 and be flopping around all over the place. And that's okay. But so now we have the challenge of designing our entry system. Now this is where things can get a little weird. You know what? Because see here we need a spacer. We need a couple of spacers actually. Where's the big one? Is that the big one? There we go. That's fine. All right. All right. That'll work. And there will be a very, very slight asymmetry. And the idea with that one is going to be to just sort of, well, no, I'm not going to risk it. That'll be fine. All right. Now, that is not nearly enough to get this monstrous thing into Eve's atmosphere. We're going to have to do a bunch of stuff up here, which is going to get kind of absurd. Now, here's the thing. We need heat shields on the side. So we have to come up with a heat shield setup here that will work on the side of our boosters. And they're going to need to be spaced out pretty far. Come on, there we go. And we're going to need it a little bit farther than that, I bet. Batteries really are very convenient for spacing on things like this. And so what we're trying to do here is protect our rocket, like the parts here and stuff, when we get into Eve. Because what'll happen, it's extremely difficult, and I'm not going to bother to try to make this mess like aerodynamically symmetrical and aerodynamically balanced. So what ends up happening? Give me just a moment. What ends up happening is that this is going to have a tendency to tumble around quite a bit inside of Eve's atmosphere. And we don't want that. And what's going to happen is when it's tumbling around, it's going to expose a lot of these other parts to aerodynamic atmospheric friction with Eve's atmosphere, which is quite thick and chunky. And we don't want that. Excuse me. In particular, this stuff down here, we don't want to heat up. So what I'm going to do okay, and our abort is gonna jettison the heat shields. Which may or may not work very well. I can tell you already, just from past experience, this will have a tendency for these heat shields to, like, when I jettison them, whether it's through, like, right-click jettison or whether it's through this little decoupler, stack separator, they will have a tendency to flip around in Eve's atmosphere and, like, do a little somersault and take out my command pod up here. So this ends up being a bit of a mess. And it's just a mess that I have to deal with. Now, we need to get this, of course, to Eve and, like, down into the atmosphere. So the way I'm going to do that is to build a descent stage like so. And this will be this is going to be the biggest, chunkiest, beefiest booster we have yet made in Kerbal Space Program. And it's still not going to be enough. We are going to have to... Excuse me. We are going to have to refuel this. You know what actually I'm thinking? We're going to have to refuel this in space around around Kerbal. Yeah, that's good. And this will be, I think, the first time in this career mode, in this career save, that we've actually done, like, proper docking. It's actually not something that I use too often. But in this particular case, we're going to be getting some really generous use out of docking procedures. And I realize I am going a little overboard with some of the struts down here, but I'm really not. This area is going to be the weakest joints of the entire rocket. Alright, now I got to build the fairing for this, which is going to be ridiculous. come on. Fighting the user interface. Come on. And we gotta stick that way up in the top of the vehicle assembly building, because underneath this, we are going to be building a rather substantial booster. I know you're shocked. And you've seen what comes down here before. But the difference is... Oh. Come on. The difference is... we're going to be using liquid boosters. Okay. That are going to be asparagus staged into the center here. And we're going to be doing something else that we have not done this career save. As I mentioned, you know, we're going to be doing docking stuff. But that means we need docking ports. So, we are going to stick some docking ports onto the side of our big chunky booster. And the idea is going to be that we're going to build a refueling rocket that we're going to send up that's going to dock with this in orbit around Kerbal, and it's going to refuel our central core stage here. That's the theory. Pulling that off is a little difficult because, again, this is a somewhat large rocket. I'm just thinking. Yeah, no, you know what? I'm just thinking out loud. There's the detail of where these go is not super critical. But for construction purposes, it'll be dramatically easier for me if I stick these on the diagonals. There, good enough. Yeah, part of the challenge with building a big, enormous rocket like this becomes that a lot of the parts, like, you know, we're fighting the construction interface here to position some of these things, and that's okay. It's just mildly annoying. Oh, I almost forgot about something else, too. Very important. Now, you know what? I gotta check my height first. We're gonna be using mainsails. And yep, I'm going to want this a little lower. That's fine. This stage of the construction's a little weird. Okay. And this is the other problem, is that I can't attach the launch clamps to the bottom of the mainsails. For whatever reason, it just doesn't let you clip those. So we've got to do launch clamps a little bit more traditional. You know, and that's not really a problem, it's just something to be aware of. And we're going to need some struts. Definitely going to need some struts. And we're going to need our Separatrons, including our Jumbo Separatron here. We're going to use the Might engine, because that's been working very well for us. Working very well. All right, what am I forgetting? I don't think I'm forgetting anything. I think this is our... yeah. Yeah, this is our mission to Eve. So, it is, of course, going to be Jeb. Now, just to make sure that this works, I'm going to launch this. And if it doesn't, I may, I'll have to come back and revert to assembly here. This last mission going to land on Eve, I'm going to say in advance, I anticipate that I am going to have to do some F5, F9, and actually load my Kraken insurance a couple of times. Especially when it comes to the entry into Eve's atmosphere and the ascent from Eve. And those are going to happen in the next episode. But those two steps in particular will probably take more than one try. So I beg your indulgence there. There's also a chance that something may happen, like I may accidentally crash one of the refuelers into this monstrous rocket. There are things that can go wrong. But, alright, here we go. We got our Kraken insurance. Oh, it's a good 3-second delay between staging into this first stage and the action actually happening. And look at that crazy fairing. It's like 18 meters wide. Jeb's all excited. So I'm going to want to try and get this in a space around like 150,000 meters. Maybe like 200,000 or so. That's the goal for a stable orbit for this. And that's just to make it so that our fuelers can rendezvous without spending too much of their fuel, because I need that to pump into this. It's probably going to take multiple refueling missions. I'm anticipating 3 or 4, just based on some quick back-of-the-envelope math that I've been doing in my head. That'll be coming in the next episode. But for now, I just want to try and get this monstrous thing up into space. And then I'm going to build the refueler, and we're going to call it a day. Or call it an episode. Man, that fairing is gross. So much dead weight. I can't wait till I don't need it. Of course, we're almost ascending slow enough where we don't need the fairing anyway, but we'll be good doobies, and we'll do it right. Come on. This is our last primary launch. It's crazy to think about, but this is our last manned launch. It's all come down to this one mission. Which is really crazy when you think about it. Alright, we're past the Kerbal line, and that's good to see. So I'm going to get my gravity turn a little bit more serious here. And the challenge, of course, is that we're dealing with a lot of bulky dead weight. But I can't quite get rid of it. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to actually be a little crafty. I'm going to wait just a moment. And I'm going to do the last 89 Delta V out of our launch stage up closer to our apoapsis and jettison all this crap up in space. But we're going to crake in insurance. All right, close enough. Oh. Yeah, it is a chore to move this thing on reaction wheels. But that's fine. Oh, I love that. Those mite engines are so useful for doing those separations. We veered a little bit off course. Now, here's the thing. This is kind of a big chunky rocket, and I have to be careful about like jumping to maximum throttle and everything. And in the next episode, I'm going to be using a lot less in-game time warp and relying a lot more on video editing time warp to save your time, even though I'm going to be sitting here watching a lot of this at 1x. Just because this is very vulnerable to the Kraken. And all I'm doing here, I'm just circularizing the orbit. And it's gonna eat an enormous amount of fuel out of this center stage, but that's fine because we got the docking ports. We're gonna refuel it, and this is gonna be our trans stage to Eve with its 2600 delta V, which will be enough. And I may even resort to using the maneuver tool on this mission, even though that's not something I've done a lot of this career, because it doesn't always work too well, but when it works, it tends to find a very efficient maneuver. And efficiency is going to be very important on this particular mission. This literally is the hardest one. This is like where I got to make it count. Put all the tools together. Come on. Come on. All right. 186 to 158. That's close enough. Now we're going to design our fueler. And we're going to need to launch several of these. And that's okay. And after we get our fueler designed, I'm gonna call this an episode. I'm not gonna bother to launch them today, or right now. Come on. Now, the fueler is literally just going to be like a big dumb rocket with a docking port on top. Not going to be much else going on with it. I'll use that in a minute. And I'm going to fast forward through the construction on the fueler because it's not going to be especially exciting, but I still want you to see exactly what I'm doing here. Okay, so this is our fueler rocket. The objective is to get these 2 tanks into a rendezvous with our mission to Eve, dock up, and transfer fuel. I'm anticipating I'm going to have to launch 3 or 4 of these in order to fill up the tanks. But it'll be worth it. So I'm going to call this an episode, and in the next episode here, we're going to be launching our fuel, docking up with our mission to Eve, planting the flag, and coming home. The end is in sight. As always, thanks for watching.